Hey, this is Jeremy Leasher, and if you want to know what's happening in the information security world, like no kidding, like you got to listen to my boy Nick Thomas with the InfoSecSync podcast.
If you're looking for insight into the vast world of information security, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the InfoSecSync podcast, the only top-rated information security podcast committed to helping you enhance your cyber skill set. Listen in on conversations with world-class information security thought leaders, subject matter experts, authors, and more as we exchange ideas, best practices, and discuss the latest trends, threats, strategies, and solutions for your success. So get ready to get in sync with your host, Nick Thomas.
Hello, and welcome to the 38th episode of the InfoSecSync podcast, where we keep you in sync with the ever-changing world of information security. I'm your host, Nick Thomas, and today we're talking with a good friend of mine from the InfoSec trenches, Mr. Jeremy Leasher. Jeremy and I, we've known each other for a long time. We've worked on various projects together, and right now he is actually finishing up his master's in information security through the SANS group there. He also has just a couple certifications, so let me go through them real quick. So he's got the GNFA, which is the Network Forensic Analyst. He's got the GPEN, which is the Penetration Tester. He's got the GSNA, the Systems and Network Auditor. He has the GPPA, Certified Perimeter Protection Analyst. He's also got the Windows Security Administrator, the GCWN. He's got the GCIH, which is the Incident Handler. He's got the Intrusion Analyst, the Certified Forensic Analyst, and, of course, the good old GSEC. And when he's actually finished and graduated from the SANS group there, he's going to have the GSE, the Security Expert Certification. So with that, I bring you Mr. Jeremy Leasher. Jeremy, how are you, buddy?
Nick, bro, what's up, man?
So Jeremy and I used to work at a certain agency, and we helped do InfoSec with weapon systems. So had a good time doing that. And let's just, Jeremy, for our listeners and our audience out there, what can you tell them about how you get started in InfoSec?
Well, I've been doing InfoSec for about 17 days, right? And I really love it. I'm just kidding. No, so, yeah, I mean, I have the start is similar to, a lot of the people in our industry, right? I joined the National Guard a long time ago. I think I was a junior in high school, right? And my dad said, he said, "Hey, son, you plan on going to college?" And I said, "Well, absolutely." He goes, "Well, how are you going to pay for it?" I said, "Well, I don't know." And he goes, "Well, you're a trust fund kid." And I'm like, "Well, okay, that's cool." And he goes, "Yeah, trust me, there's no fun for you, so figure it out," right? And so anyway, so I joined the National Guard. I've been doing that now 22 years. I started off doing, regular communications, line of sight communications, setting up antennas, doing SATCOM, and that's kind of how I slow rolled this thing into security. And then over the last, 10, 15 years, I was a hardcore network route switch guy, back in the early 2000s, which I think paid dividends for me because I understood how computer systems work and communicate, right, which is really, really important in the cyber threat hunting and incident response world. And then, right, I've had multiple roles, doing, all the SAN search you were talking about there, right? I was fortunate enough to be a part of kind of an elite group of warrant officers in the National Guard, where I went to a school back in 2016 at Fort Gordon in Georgia, and was able to go through basically a 9-month school of hell that actually produced about 8 of those certifications.
Wow, that's amazing.
And that prepared me, right? I mean, and the only thing, right? I mean, and we'll talk about this, right? We're going to talk about the security training versus education and certifications, but I think what that did for me, right, ultimately was it made me realize what I didn't know, right? The more certifications that you gain, right, for whatever reasons, it makes you realize, man, I think I'm dumber than I was before I took the last exam, right? And so, right, it's important to me, right? You'll find, and I think you and I have like minds where it's not a matter of just doing anything, but it is a matter of circling your peers and those and training, educating, and advising because I think we both agree that there's probably not as many security folks as there were even 5 years ago or 6 years ago when you and I first met. And it's our job, right, to kind of train the next generation of cyber engineers, cyber analysts, whatever, because if not, we're going to be in a world of hurt. So.
Yeah, right now there's actually, from reports I've heard before, millions in shortage of people in the cybersecurity field.
Well, I mean, you look at these numbers, right? Where you look at the fact, I think the last things I saw from, I forget where I saw it, but right, they're saying that there is one person to fill every 5 security jobs, right? And so because of that, and we'll talk about this too, right? So now the security industry is having to, they need somebody who is, and I see this on LinkedIn all the time, where there was a post about a job description, and it said that they wanted 12 years of experience in a certain technology. Yeah. And that technology had only been around for like 2 years, right?
Right.
So how am I supposed
Where's
to get
that
12
person?
years of it? Yeah, right. So, but no, I mean, I think we're in a unique spot, right? I mean, if you look at the Huntsville area, you look at Colorado Springs and Fort Gordon, right there, these cyber pockets, right? There's a lot of diversity, and there's a lot of depth in those areas. But you go outside of those kind of areas of our country, and you talk to recruiters, and you talk to companies that are they're becoming more technology reliant because they know that they can't find the right people to do the jobs. And so hopefully, right, people that are going to watch this or whatever, I'm not going to make you smarter, but hopefully Nick and I will at least get your mind thinking around things that you normally don't do.
So you're at a company now called Axellio, right? Tell us about the company and what you do there.
Yeah, so Axellio, man, it's like I can't say enough good things, right? And this is not a promoting them. This is I left a really awesome company to go to work for Axellio, and one of the main reasons why I did it is because what Axellio is doing is legitimately solving problems that you and I, at that 3-letter agency, we were banging our heads up against the concrete wall saying, if I only had, right, if I only had this. And that if I only had thing is what Axellio was actually building, producing, and integrating now, right? Axellio, I guess, is technically a startup, right? But they are not really a startup. They actually were a spinoff from a couple other companies. But Axellio has been around for about 3 years. And what we're doing is they're storage guys, right? These guys were some of the developers, and our CTO was actually helped develop the first VAX computer system, right, with DAC way back in the day. So these are very smart computer engineers, very smart storage guys, and they can move bits really fast. And so what they did is they looked at a security problem from a software development standpoint versus a security standpoint, right? And so what they basically built is the ability to collect full packet data, right? And when I say full packet data, I'm talking upwards of 100 gigabits per second, right? With no data loss. In a nutshell, we collect all the packets. We store them to disk, right? NVMe storage, flash storage, so that there is a longer look back window, and we don't have this big memory buffer kind of thing. And then the unique part about our solution is that once that data is on disk, it's persistent, right? So if I need to go back, and it depends on your ingest rate, right? If I'm ingesting at 20 gigabits per second, and if I have a lot of storage, my look back window increases. But for instance, what we're doing is we have a couple customers that we're working with now, right? Some government agencies that had a unique problem in wanting to not only capture full packet data, right, because they valued it, and they're kind of visionaries in their field. And they said, but we realized that, it's kind of like saying you own a grocery store, right, and you have security cameras, but you don't have any footage to go back and look at it, right? Well, that's great, but if you're not watching the video cameras or in the store when somebody breaks in, well, what good's it, right? I mean, what good is that? And so there is we're basically a high-speed DVR for network packets, right?
Nice.
But we do a lot of other things, right? But that's, in a nutshell, we're doing that. We're also building, small portable solutions that basically fit TSA carry-on requirements. And that's basically a really small, powerful data center in a box, right? Talking to the point of, a petabyte of storage, and several hundred physical cores, a lot of processing power, and what we're basically doing is being able to push high-speed computing, hyper-converged infrastructure at the edge to do different things, right? Whether I'm trying to collect data for financial trading analysis, right, on the trading floor, or whether I'm trying to collect data packets or network packets to be able to go back in time and do proactive threat hunting for, I don't call them, APTs. I hate that term, but they are persistent threats, but they're not necessarily always advanced, right? So
just a question on the data ingest. How are you guys sifting through that data? Are you using Splunk? Are you using something proprietary? How do you go through that?
Well, it depends on the customer base, right? So some of the things that we're doing now is in a nutshell, the back end of the system, we have the ability to collect large amounts of data, right? And then traditionally, right, and the reason this is kind of unique is that I know when you and I were working together, right, we had tons of endpoint data, right? And I got an alert that said something bad is happening on an endpoint, right? Well, that's okay, but what I also needed was the ability to go, I don't necessarily need content, but I need context of what happened. And so if you can look at a flash, a bang, a fire of a rifle, and then go back in time to say, well, what kind of rifle, what kind of caliber was it, right, to get the content or the
how fast was it spinning?
Yeah, I mean, all of those things, right? Really good security people, right? Here's what happens, right? And being in the military for a long time, and you as well, you can relate to this, right? A novice to shooting weapons, they'll say, I heard a bang, right? I couldn't tell you what kind of weapon it is, but to a security guy, he'll go, that was a 12 gauge with buckshot, or that was a 12 gauge with a slug, or that was a 203 or 5.56, right? Because they've been there and done that, and they can not only hear they understand the context of that sound and over time. So
absolutely.
But back to answer your question, right? So basically, what we do is we collect a lot of packets. We immediately write that to disk versus trying to create a large memory buffer in traditional models. And one of the things that we've been able to do is, okay, if you're going to collect a lot of packets and you want to analyze those, what you have to do is you have to build your analytical backend for worst case scenario. And let me give you an example.
Your infrastructure, right?
Yeah, your analyst infrastructure, your analysis infrastructure. If I know that on a daily average, I'm going to ingest 10 to 15 gigabits per second of traffic, but that could burst to 40, well, I have to build my analytical backend, my infrastructure, to handle the 40. So I'm spending a lot of money, right, to build that up for worst case scenario. So what we've done is, let's say that, Nick, you're a Splunk instance. We ingest a lot of the data at 100 gigabits per second, but you can only receive the data at 6 gigabits per second, right? I can throttle the amount of data you get to your SIM, right, so that you don't drop packets. And we're actually collecting everything on disk, and whether it spikes to 80 gigabits or 100 gigabits, right? But what we also do is we feed that through Zeek, we feed it through Snort Suricata, you name it, Security Onion, whatever sort of IDS, IPS, right, data correlation, data classification engine. And then obviously we send those Zeek logs, Snort Suricata, to whatever SIM you prefer, right? Elk, HP ArcSight, Splunk, whatever it is. Yeah.
Awesome. So I know you're a big proponent of security training, education, and, being in the military, we're used to doing this all the time. That's how we train. That's how we learn. So in your opinion, is there a difference between the two?
Oh, absolutely. Right. I mean, I think there is a huge, right. And I think part of that dilemma, right, of training and education is what got us into the point where we're in now, where people want to be trained to get a job and to make the mighty dollar, but they don't really understand the fundamental concepts of what they're actually doing, right? And so there's a huge difference between training and education, and that's something that I am passionate about, specifically not only in the commercial space, but in the National Guard side, right? I've been a warrant officer now for almost 12 years, and I know that I can't bang on a keyboard forever, and I'm not the smartest guy in the room, right? I'm just not. And so, but the biggest value I can give to not only the Army, but the people around me now is to train, educate, and advise, right, on not necessarily tools, but to truly understand it. And let me give you an example. So I was around a group of individuals, and they said, hey, we want you to teach us, a certain tool. And I was like, well, I'm not going to teach you a tool, because that really doesn't, it's like training a guy to fish and you feed him for life, right, kind of thing. They they said, hey, teach us a tool. And so here's what I did, right? I drew on a whiteboard. I drew a computer connected to a switch, connected to a layer 3 router, right? And then connected to another layer 2 switch, and then an endpoint. And I said, okay, who in here can tell me if I wanted to send a ping packet, right, an ICMP echo request from PC1 to PC2, walk me through the entire process. And they looked at me and they went, I think there's like a gateway in there, and right, there's some VLAN stuff, and then it goes to the other guy, and then it just comes back. And I'm like, well, sure, right? That's the hand wavy aspect of it, but right, I'm talking about encapsulation, decapsulation. How do the packets actually make it from one hop to the next, right? What are the
going up and down the stack?
Yeah, I mean, and this is simple stuff, right? People say, well, I'm just going to send a ping packet. Well, that's fine, right? The simplest form, but do they really understand how computers communicate, right? Because doing incident response and doing threat hunting, you can be the smartest tool guy in the world, right? I can reverse engineer malware and I can do all these things, but if you don't grasp the simple concepts of how computer systems are constructed, right? Let me give you another example. If you're doing incident response or threat hunting and you ask or trying to train and educate, and you say, okay, I've got a Windows 10 box that had just booted up, and it's currently got, let's say, 237 processes running in memory, right after boot up, right? And you ask them, is that normal or not normal? And they go, I don't know. Well, I mean, no, that's probably not normal, right? I mean, there might be circumstances that are, or you ask the other question is that, okay, let's take that same scenario and say, immediately after startup, your PC, your Windows whatever PC, has 342 concurrent TCP established connections to outbound entities, right? Is that normal? Well, no, it's probably not normal, right? Those kind of things between training to get, being trained to get a certificate to do and being in the DoD, you and I know, right? You got to meet these requirements to get that job, and I got to be IAM level, IAT level, whatever. And so, but I think we've lost the fundamental concepts of what it means, the difference between training and education.
So there are large differences there.
Oh yeah, for sure, brother.
So, what's your company Axellio doing? Are you guys educating? Do you do training? Tell me about that. So when I came to Axellio about 9 months ago, right, I'm working with a bunch of really smart computer engineers and storage guys, right? They are not security people. I'm kind of the first security guy that they've really, been kind of circled around for the last 9 months. And so, but they're starting to understand, right? So from a building computer systems and understanding how they communicate and moving bits, right? That is very difficult. I don't understand all of that, but when they understand the concepts of security and they go, well, I could do network security, endpoint security. I can do web application security. There are so many different segments, right? Nick, you know this. It is mind-boggling, right? To have somebody who can come in and do 9 different things, right? And then you don't want to pay them that well or whatever it is. But so when I came to Axellio, I said, look, training our customers, for one, because you go to a customer and you say, we want to sell you full packet data, right? They go, well, I haven't had it, right? Or their first rebuttal is, it's too expensive. You can't keep up with my network speeds, yada, 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 right? Well, once we debunk those myths and tell them what we're doing, then they go, okay, cool. But the next question is, well, even if I could do all the things that you say you do, my people, my security people don't know what to do with the packets anyway, right? So you got to make it very easily, create a simple workflow that takes that packet data and makes sense of it all, right? And so because of that, Axellio, I'm actually building basically a free 2-day hands-on, threat hunting course. It's education, right? It's not training, right? If you come to this class, right, and you're not going to be a threat hunting expert, right? That is not the intent of this class. The intent of this class is to make you think about what does it mean to be an active hunter, right? And so here's an example, right? If you're going to go hunt elk, right, for our hunting community out there, you're going to go hunt elk or squirrel or deer. You don't just show up with a pistol in your pocket and say, good luck, right? You take the time to go, what time of year it is, right?
are there bodies of water nearby that I know that are going to be watering holes, right? What kind of food do they eat? What direction is the wind going? I mean, you think about your hunt before you ever actually do it, right? And it's the same in the security world. There are things that you must think about, and that's kind of what this course is about, right? It is, the expectation is that after 2 days, you not only understand that threat hunting is really 90% mental, it's 90% preparation and 10% tangible tasks, right? And that's kind of what I'm building, and that should be ready probably end of April, 1st of May is when I'm going to launch that course.
All right, so you'll definitely be back on and let us know about that, right?
Absolutely, right. And your listeners, right? We'll have to talk about this, but I'm gonna give your listeners, whoever signs up, the fastest, I guess, we'll give them some. The course is free, but obviously we have limited seating because of the response to, or the request to be in the classes. So we'll give your listeners, right, a golden ticket, right? Willy Wonka and the golden ticket to get into the class.
Awesome. We appreciate that. So,
Absolutely.
So Axellio is really focused on educating the customer base. And I think that's a plus, for anything that any purchase,
Well, I mean, are we in the business to make money? Obviously, right? But we don't want to just sell stuff, right? We want to partner with people and partnering long term, right? Because what we realized that right, the EDR, NDR, right, endpoint detect and response, network detect and response, right? People are very used to, security people are really bad about habitual things, right? And I saw this on LinkedIn the other day. It said some of the worst words you could ever say is because we've always done it that way, right? It's detrimental to new learning and new education. Well,
that's every place we've worked, right?
Yeah, especially in the government, right? I mean, the government is horrible about, well, why are you doing it that way? Because that's the way we've always done it. And giving people the ability to learn new things, to fail, right? I think failing often and failing fast, but learning from that, I think, is something that right? When we were doing the space program, right? How many times did we fail, right? Back in the 60s and 70s? I mean, but we didn't let that, right, kind of distract us. And even though we weren't first into space, right, we still made huge leaps and bounds kind of thing. But Axellio realizes, right, specifically in what we're doing, right, we're not selling a SIM, we're not selling these things. What we're selling is the ability to see your environment better, right, and from a totally different direction. And ultimately, right, in the DFIR world, right, this is something that I harp on all the time. We're not selling, right, from an Axellio standpoint, we're not selling just full packet capture solutions that do traffic analysis and alerting and all those kind of things. What we're ultimately selling is trying to solve the hard problem of urgent versus important, right? Well, what does that mean? Well, you and I know that as a security analyst, right, you get alert fatigue, and I've got a dashboard that has several hundred alerts, and it's up to us, because we're the high-paid guys, to go, well, what's important versus urgent, right? I've got, I might have, somebody downloading John the Ripper, inside of my network, but it might be a developer who's actually trying to come up with a password cracking tool because we're a security company, right? It's not malicious. Or it could be that, I've got, nation states trying to do some crazy things from the outside, right? So it is this constant, because security companies, specifically security individuals, right, are not plentiful. And if I'm a SOC manager and I've got 6 people, right, it's my job to use the resources that I have most efficiently. And if I can have the really smart people focusing on the really tough problems, and the folks who are still learning, your engineer 1s, engineer 2s, tossing, needles over the haystack or over the wall, that's really what I'm trying to do. And so having better visibility, right, from the flash to bang, is what we're ultimately trying to sell and partner, and it's solving the hard problem of urgent versus important.
So I want to pull the thread there on the threat hunting piece you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So usually in threat hunting, there's 2 pieces, right? You have the host, right, looking what's on the host, and of course you have your enterprise, what's on the network. So how have those things changed? And tell us more about what your course is going to do to educate the customers on that.
Well, yes, I think that's a loaded question, right? I think a lot of companies, a lot of individuals are smart about understanding, right, or have a lot of technical debt, right? I'll say that. A lot of companies have a lot of technical debt that they've bought technology, right, to offset the gray matter that they don't have, or the gap of gray matter. Excuse me. And so because of that, right, if the tool cannot make the decision for them, they're left to twiddling their fingers, right? And that's why education, right? It goes back to education versus training, right? And I was looking at another company, and I won't say the name, right? They're a great company, but I was looking at they have a 2-day threat hunting course, right? But their threat hunting course was all about their products, right? The course that I'm developing is tool agnostic. We're not going to talk about, like, we might talk about Wireshark, which is not really a tool. It is a packet visibility thing, right? But it could be a tool, but we're not talking about tools. What we're ultimately going to talk about, right? And I think people talk about this. They say, well, you need to live off the LAN, right? The local area network, or hunt off the LAN. But what does that really mean, right? If all I gave you was access to Active Directory, Windows event system logs, right? Application security, or the traditional Windows event logs, or Linux logs, right? And I gave you DHCP and DNS records, right? How much, if you gave that to a new security guy, he'd go, well, what am I supposed to do with this, right? It's not in a SIM. It's not, right? It's not. It doesn't look pretty, right? I don't even know how to read a Windows event log. What's an event ID of 4624 or 4625, right? They grasp no concept. And so I think from today's standpoint, if it's endpoint specific, and I think a lot of our hunting is endpoint specific. And I've had a lot of great people, right? Smart, like Jake Williams from I think Jake Williams was the first guy that actually told me this, or maybe it was Brandon Merculis. I forget who it was, but they said that malware has to do two things well, right? It has to hide and it has to communicate, right? And I think that's one of, typical example is, you get malware that launches on an endpoint, maybe the EDR solution, or an event gets triggered that says, hey, something bad is on this endpoint. But unless you know to go look at, to do a quick netstat, right, or to look at, persistent or current TCP connections, or connections that, like in netstat, right, that only lives in memory kind of thing, you'll say, well, I can see that malware hit this endpoint, but where did it come from, right? Was this the first endpoint that was infected, or was this a lateral movement, or a push from another box, or right? And so looking at host data, right, is very important. Don't get me wrong, but having the network data to augment that, right, to tell a complete and full contextual, having full situation awareness, I think is what's part of the class, and I think is something that is missing in the security community today.
So it's sort of been what I'm trying to say is, like, for instance, the 8570, right? People focus on these certifications. Yeah. They study for the certs, but they're missing the technical piece, or the CSI piece of what's happening when you answer a question a certain way. Are you thinking about how are these packets moving up and down the stack, right? Yeah. Is it being encapsulated? What's happening here at the application layer? So learning and training are two different things, and it's sort of like mastering a craft is no longer important.
Yeah. I mean, that's literally, right. And so you got to put yourself in the employer's shoes, right? If I'm an employer, right, whether it's the government or the commercial industry, right, and I go, right, and I've seen this on LinkedIn a lot of times. I'm sure you've seen it too, Nick, where it goes, it's a banter back and forth between like two managers, and they go, what if we train our employees and they leave, right? And then the response to that is, what if we don't train them and they stay, right? So
That's awesome.
So what do you do, right? I mean, and so you got to look at it and go, right, I don't want to have a lot of technical debt, but I don't really have a choice, because I can't find the right human gray matter that's going to mature, right? And this everything we're talking about is ultimately, how do you mature a security organization, right? Because I would venture to say that if you go to almost any company, right, even if it's Mandiant, even if it's FireEye, even if it's Target or Home Depot, whoever, and you talk to their security people and you'd say, don't ask them if they want to buy full packet data, or don't ask them if they want to attend threat hunting class. You say, do you think that you are as mature an organization as you could be? And they're probably going to say no, right? We can always learn it, and that's the hook, right? That is the way of having a legit conversation, right? Keeping it tool agnostic, keeping it agnostic, and just having a fundamental conversation that says, no, I'm not as educated or trained as I should be, And that's my spin on this, right? And so, even in the course that I'm building right now, right, there is a lot of parallels, right? Because I think we get so wrapped up in our right. I was talking with our CTO the other day, and we were having a conversation with the company, and he goes, if you can say, right, next gen AI, ML, and GPU acceleration in the same sentence, right? You've hit the cybersecurity bingo, right? You've said all the right things, but it's hand wavy, and a lot of people don't even know what that stuff means, right? And so, as part of the class, right, I literally draw direct parallels between an actual game hunt, right? I'm a country guy, right? I deer hunted almost my whole life, and so when you're preparing for a hunt, right, or even if it's you could parlay this to the opposite sex and ladies who are getting ready to go shopping. Let's say it's Black Friday shopping, even that, right? They don't just show up to Target or to the mall. They're scoping out Facebook, right? They're flipping, going, oh, they got deals, but they don't open till 1 o'clock in the morning, so I'm going to go there. Right?
They got a map of the store.
They got a map. I mean, yeah, there's so many parallels to all this stuff, right? It's fascinating, right? But yeah, I think one of the things, right? And so there's also, I've been doing some homework on this whole this topic of imposter syndrome, right? Because I really didn't understand what that meant, right? And I'm like, well, what does it mean? So I started, getting my Google on, and it is this mindset of people that have been in the security industry, whether they've been in it for 5 years or 35 years, of going, am I impostering what I know? Am I the smartest guy in the room? Am I the smartest lady in the room or not? It is this imposter of, right, we all talk a big game, but when it comes to the fundamental education of what do I know, right? And then you go, man, I really don't know as much as I think I do, right? And so because of that, right, again, go back to the what we were talking about before. Put yourself in the customer's shoes of, do I buy things, tangible hardware things, or do I invest money in people, right? And so you have a hard decision to go, well, yes, I'd rather invest in people, right? But if I invest in people and they do leave, right, then that is revenue or return on investment lost. But if I invest money in technology, a server's just not going to up and leave, right? I mean, it's going to just sit there until it dies, right? So you have to have even that mentality too, to go, right? And so this is why a lot of companies are outsourcing security, right? Because people are realizing, right? I mean, even up until 10 years ago, right, cybersecurity insurance policies weren't even a thing, Nick. I mean, now you've got Travelers and you've got all these companies who are offering cybersecurity insurance policies, which is the new silver bullet, right? Mm-hmm. But even that standpoint, right? Not doing your homework. Insurance companies are in the business to not pay. So if you're not prepared, right, you're going to be stuck with a big bill.
So getting back to your solutions with Axellio, hold on, get a sip real quick. What solutions do you have to fill that cybersecurity gap, or do you guys have such a thing?
Well, I mean, so we're still trying to figure out what we want to be when we grow up. Honestly, right? I mean, we were building this full packet capture solution, this product. I mean, we're still trying to figure out, right? We have a product, but we're still trying to figure out what kind of company do we want to be, right? Do we want to be a security company? What do we want to be? And yeah, we're going to be a security company because I think it makes the most sense. But we had this great idea of we're gonna move packets faster. We're gonna collect packets, we're gonna store them, and we're gonna move them faster than anybody else in the industry, right? And we have achieved that, right? And so we were fortunate enough to find some opportunities with the government, right? That with some visionary people who said, we understand the importance of visibility, not only north-south visibility, right? So ingress, egress, but also laterally. And so we partner with them, and we're in the process. We're doing great things for this government entity, right? But it leads us to do we want to only focus on their problems, or do we want to kind of go outside of our realm of possibility? And so we're doing other things too, right? We understand that what we have, being able to collect all of the data, right? Whether that's we can collect endpoint data, we can collect network data, right? So could we be a full SIEM in a box? Probably, right? But one of the other things that we started tinkering with is this idea of AI ML, right? AI ML at the end of the day is math and it's algorithms, and it's trying to put things in a box so that if they don't fit that box and they fit outside of the box, it's an abnormality, right? And that's ultimately, one of the things that, but the problem with AI ML is that you have to feed it tons of data, right? And it needs to be different types of data, right? So that you can, if I'm trying to find a zero-day attack, right? If I'm building an analysis engine to find a zero-day attack, I got to shove so much data at it so fast, right? And so we've thought, well, we have all of the data, right? We can literally collect all of the data and store it persistently for, if you've got millions of dollars and you want to have petabytes of storage, right? You could have storage that goes back years, but we can feed it really fast. And so we've thought about, well, what about companies that are investing in AI ML, and we are the delivery mechanism for the data that feeds their AI models, right? So that could be an opportunity, right? We're doing other things, right? So one of the discussions that we have with our customers is the customer will say, that's great, right? I want to buy your solution because you're going to collect all the packets. Well, what about the data that I don't care about, right? What about YouTube videos and LinkedIn and people watching InfoSecSync? No, I'm just kidding. But and we say, well, yes, right. If there is data that you don't want to keep, right, we can filter that data out, right, before it ever actually gets ingested and touches disk. So you're saving storage space. Well, then the next question is, what about encrypted data, right? That is a very tough topic, especially in the government industry, because you're either on both sides. Either we're going to break and inspect all the data and you have no privacy, so to speak, or we're not going to break and inspect it and we're going to protect the privacy. This, Nick, you log onto a government computer and it goes, you consent to giving your first child's, everything, right? We got a full Komodo. And so, but we've also been tinkering with the idea of, things like JA3 fingerprinting, right? It's not necessarily relatively new, but there is value in, because a lot of companies say, well, if it's encrypted, I don't want to keep it. Well, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? There is valuable things that you can find and glean from even encrypted data, right? JA3 fingerprinting takes the ability of knowing that there's still a TCP three-way handshake before key exchange, right? To start an SSL or TLS session, and all that data is sent in the clear, right? So if I can see what kind of key exchange happens, and generally SSL TLS sessions happen always the same way, right? And so what's the value in that? Well, the value in that is not in the data that I know that I'm encrypting or that's encrypted in my environment. But if I've got a malicious actor who I know is eventually going to get into my environment, and they're moving laterally, right? Either trying to maintain persistence, or they're trying to exfil data, or trying to do ransomware or whatever it is, and all their traffic is encrypted. If I can identify that encrypted traffic doesn't belong to my environment, then that's huge, right? At least I know that is not me. That is not of my environment. It's not indicative of me. That is outside of the norm, and I should go investigate it, right? So those kind of things are kind of what we're trying to meld into our, what do we want to be when we grow up, and what kind of a company are we going to be?
Awesome. So moving on to your other career, right? Let's talk about the Army stuff, Mr. Warrant Officer.
Yeah, man, what you got?
What's going on with Army Cyber Command? What's the newest, and what's the newest going on there?
Well, I was actually at so in the Army world, specifically Army Cyber, right? They have an Axellio, and I don't even know what the acronym stands for, but anybody listening to your podcast will probably know what Axellio is. But I was actually at TechNet in Augusta back in 2019 somewhere. Right, and so at the time, Lieutenant General Fogarty was there, who's Army Cyber Command director, and at the time, right, Cyber Command was still a thing, right? Cyber became its own domain, land, air, sea, and then cyber kind of thing, and now we've got Space Command, right? We've actually got soldiers, sailors, Marines, Coast Guard folks who are actually changing their badging and becoming, Space Command. But at the time, Cyber Command was still a thing. And this was the very, Lieutenant General Fogarty, right? I love him because he's still a guy who understands the importance of whiteboarding. And he literally had this huge whiteboard up on stage, right? And he's like, let me show you what I want to do, right? So he's getting on this whiteboard and he's drawing stuff, and he goes, do you guys know what that is? Of course, everybody in the crowd's like, well, this guy's lost his freaking mind, right? And he basically said, this is going to be the new cyber command in about 2 or 3 years, and we're going to call it Information Warfare Command, right?
Wow.
And so that's actually what's been transpiring. So at some point in the future, right, because that's important, because cyber is not just cyber, right? You have military intelligence, right? You have MI, you have EWO, electronic warfare. You have all of these different subsets of cyber that electromagnetic spectrum analysis and all these things, from jamming of Bluetooth and jamming of Wi-Fi and jamming of UHF, VHF, all of these different frequencies plays a part in cyber effects, right? Trying to create a cone of silence, so to speak, in a combat zone. And so that's something new that's going on, right? And technically, I am technically not. I'm a 250. I'm a CW3, and my MOS is a 255 Sierra. So I'm technically not cyber. I'm not cyber. I'm branched actually signal. So I'm still technically a signal officer, but signal cyber, it's all the same. But and my role in the Guard is I'm in the Alabama National Guard. I am one of the senior warrant officers on the Defensive Cyber Operations team. Right. Actually, my good battle buddy, my best friend since 6th grade, and he's also a warrant officer, is on the cyber protection team. And his name is Sam Adams. And yes, Sam Adams, just like the beer, right? And his dad is John Adams. So we got a president and a beer maker, right? So Sam's on the CPT. And so the CPTs have a unique mission, right? And I'll be careful with how I structure these words, is that there's a task force, right, that has a mission up in the DC, Maryland area, right, and their job is to do the no kidding cyber work, right, and so what is awesome to me is that the Army, and in a greater order, the Department of Defense is putting more value on National Guard and Reserve and their capabilities, right, because what they're starting to realize is that these guys, right, and not saying that active duty, active component are not really smart people, but they're really smart people at what their job has been, right? And they've done kind of the same job for 15 years, right? In the National Guard, you might have a guy who's a plumber, right, on the weekend, but he comes to drill and he's an MP, or you might have a guy who's an attorney or a lawyer, but he comes to drill and he might still be an attorney or a lawyer, but,
right.
But we are so diverse in our ability. So this task force that goes up to the Northeast every year, and it's a 1-year rotation. Not only is it showing to the Army that the National Guard and Reserve has a great capability, but it also proves to us that we can do what the Army's trained us to do, right? I mean, back in 2016, I had just came back off deployment from Afghanistan in 2014, and I was a 255 November, so I was a networking warrant officer, right? And I had one of my CW5s ask me, hey, I think you'd be good for this course. I'm like, what's the course? He goes, well, it's this thing called Sierra course, and it's for senior W-2 warrant officers, and it's really tough, and a lot of people fail it. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I can be the first guy from Alabama to fail it too, right? I don't know. So I signed up, I got approved, and I tell you what, Nick, like you and I have talked about this, right? That is the toughest course I've ever been in, right? Not only mentally, not necessarily physically, but mentally, right? I mean, literally, it was a 9-month course. I think we went through 12 SANS courses, and we had to have 6 certifications to graduate, right? And I ended up, getting a few extras while I was there, just because, I'm an overachiever. But we were literally taking a SANS course every 9 days, right? So generally, when you take a SANS course, you get 4 months, right? If you do the on demand, or if you go to a conference, you get 4 months. Like, we would literally get our books. We would take a certification on a Friday. We would get the books for the new SANS course that day. We would start indexing and reading through the books on Saturday, Sunday. The following week, we would have the 6-day course with a CTF, a capture the flag event on that Saturday. So we were in class 6 days a week for 9 months. And then the following week, we would have 3 days to study on our own. One final day of prep in the week. So every 9 days for literally 7 to 9 months, we were taking the SANS cert, right? And so again, that's training, right? That I didn't really get educated, right? I mean, because there's only so much crap you can shove into your brain and right, you shove in more ones and zeros, and the bits start falling out the other side, right? I mean,
into the bit bucket.
Into the bit bucket, yeah, right. They just fall off the table. So, right. So I think so. The Army, I think, is doing great things, right? The DoD is doing great things from cyber, right? You're starting to see, especially, obviously, talk about real world events with SolarWinds, the SolarWinds breach and SolarGate and whatever other names they came up with it, right? I think that really showed, right, that maybe we do have some imposter syndrome in our community, right, where people think we're impermeable, it's not going to happen to us, and it was proven that nation state actors with large amounts of money and not advanced, although SolarWinds was pretty advanced, but they were persistent, right? I mean,
they had time.
It's
and people.
Absolutely. I mean, well, it's so right. So I'm glad you brought that up, because we as the United States, specifically the intelligence community, we know, right, that in China and not Japan, but China, Russia, they're literally recruiting their brightest and best teenagers, starting at 12, 13 years old, and they're training them to legitimately be hackers, right, for their country, and their number one target is the U.S., right? Well, we have, what is your 12-year, how old's your daughter?
20.
She's 20 now. Oh, good grief.
My son's 16.
Well, most 12 and 13, 14, most teenagers today, right, like I didn't even know this was a thing until like a year ago. Most teenagers today in the U.S., what do they want to do? They want to be an influencer, social media.
Right.
Or did you know that I think kids get paid to watch other people play video games?
Yes.
Like so right. So when you look at this dilemma of China, Russia, North Korea, who are promoting and educating their youngsters to do bad things, right? Don't get me wrong, but they're smart people, and our young people want to play video games or be an influencer or have their own television show, right? I mean, two totally different dynamics. And so now here we are in this part of our lives where, you've got 5 security jobs open and only one person to fill them, right?
Only one person to fill them,
yeah. Yeah.
So, Jeremy, running out of time here. Let all our listeners and viewers know how to get in contact with you. What's the website, your email?
Yeah, so my personal email is jeremy.leasher@gmail.com. I'm on LinkedIn, right? So if you guys want to hit me up on LinkedIn, that's fine too. Axellio is just Axellio.com. I also have my own personal company, right, that I've started. I think you started your company at the same time I started mine back in like 2013, 2014. It's called Warrant Solutions. So me and that good friend of mine, Sam Adams, not the beer, but my real good friend, he and I started our own company because we knew that there were small businesses out there who had the same risk and the same problems as the big companies, but they didn't have the resources to fix it. So we really focused on doing security assessments, security things for small businesses, specifically in the healthcare and the finance industry. So that's Warrant Solutions. I'm not going to give out my personal cell phone number because I think that would be stupid. But yeah, Jeremy Leasher on LinkedIn, and I gave my email address and Facebook, LinkedIn stuff. I don't do Facebook, but I think Axellio does. So yeah, brother.
All right, and keep us posted with the course. We'll give you that information as soon as we have it. And Jeremy, thanks for coming on, and thanks for staying in sync with InfoSecSync.
That's it for this episode. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts from. And as always, thanks for staying in sync with InfoSecSync.